Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the underdog of premium point-and-shoot cameras, the Fujifilm Klasse S. A quick disclaimer right from the start, this video isn't highly technical, it's just about my own personal experiences with the camera and what I like about it. When you think of a high-end point-and-shoot camera, you usually think of things like the Contax T2 or T3 or something like a Yashica T5, which are all extremely expensive right now. The reason the Klasse S isn't so widespread is because I think it was only made for the Japanese market, and it was sold on release for around 89,000 yen, which is something like 700 euros. Now, a mint quality Klasse S costs around the double of that now on eBay, so something around like 1,400 euros. If you are lucky, you might actually get a cheaper one. The biggest problem with these cameras usually is that if the electronics fail, they are usually not usable anymore because they only have electronic parts inside them. If you know the right person though, someone like Piero from PPP Repairs, you might get lucky and he might be able to fix it. So if you have a broken point and shoot, send it to him. Anyways, back to the Klasse S. I got this camera a few years ago when I was looking for something that was a bit more cheaper and more affordable than all these premium point and shoot cameras, but I still wanted a camera that could do a few things like changing the ISO, having something like aperture priority mode, turning on and off the flash, all these things that you kind of need when you want a point and shoot camera. So back in the summer of 2021, I did a bit of street photography, which is something that I don't usually do, but I thought it would be cool to use the Klasse S for exactly that. I didn't have anything specific in mind. I was just walking through the city center and I decided to take a few frames of things that kind of caught my eye. It was a beautiful and an extremely hot summer day, and I thought the best film for this would be Ilford's FP4, which is also fantastic to make prints in the darkroom from. When I started using the Klasse S and developed my first rolls, I was really quite impressed with the results. The most important thing for me was the fact that the camera has manual controls and that you can actually take advantage of them in all sorts of ways. So a few things that kind of stuck out for me were the ISO can be changed, which is really cool because that means you can just push a roll of film if you need to. It has an aperture priority mode, which is very practical. And you can even focus manually by entering the preferred focusing distance in the camera. So that's obviously not like with a normal SLR or rangefinder where you can just turn the actual lens and focus, but it's still some sort of manual focusing, which is pretty cool. And finally, the holy grail of point and shoots, you can turn off the flash, and as you turn off the camera, it will actually remember the settings. So when you turn it on again, the flash will still be turned off, which is pretty cool. Also, there are some pretty cool things like if you bulk load or you develop yourself, what you can do with the camera is you can set it to rewind, and it won't rewind the film completely, but it will actually leave out like 15 or I think 10 centimeters of the film out of the canister. So if you want to spool it onto a darkroom reel, or if you want to be a real friend to your photo lab and make their life a lot easier, then you can also use that setting because then they don't have to fiddle around with getting the film out of the canister. So here are some of the photographs I took with the Klasse S. The lens on the Klasse S renders colors really beautifully, and it's something that you can really see with slide film. I could imagine that this camera was actually designed mainly with a focus on slide film. Slide film is actually very tricky to get right, and there isn't really much room for error in terms of latitude. And the Klasse S meters the frames so beautifully that I never had negatives, or in this case positives, that were lacking any sort of tonality. Also, for me personally, that meant the negatives were bang on and always a joy to work with in the darkroom. When the pandemic started, I took the Klasse S everywhere when I went out for long walks, and it was the perfect camera for me when you wanted to be discreet, yet kind of have still very high yielding results. I made a few darkroom prints of some of my favorite frames that I took with the camera and scanned the prints. So what you're seeing now aren't actually scanned negatives like before, but scanned 8x10 inch silver gelatin darkroom prints that I made. I appreciated this camera so much when I was printing in the darkroom because the frames were always perfectly sharp, sometimes even too sharp for my personal taste. But most importantly, the contrast was on a level where I had to do very little contrast control on the enlarger. Some prints I could even do without any sort of contrast filters, just by simply dodging and burning. Now, having said all of this, I actually don't own the Klasse S anymore. The point and shoot style of camera is just something that doesn't really fit in my workflow, and I don't really believe in having cameras that you don't use, because at the end of the day, for me, they are just tools, even if you can lust after some of them. The Klasse S actually never let me down, and it was a camera that has performed so well, and ironically it only let me down one single time, and that's when I made this video. And it's actually this one photo of the person with the umbrella that I tried to get into focus, but because there were the pillars that were much closer, they were obviously in focus. And this is something where it would have made a lot of sense to use the manual focus and set it to infinity, but I was not really thinking about that at the time. So to wrap up this video, I'd just like to give a big shout out to my girlfriend Laura, who was so kind to film me in Vienna when I was doing all the street photography. And a big thank you to everyone who watched this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it. Maybe you got some insight into an Underdog camera that you never heard of. And please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you soon for more content. Take care. Bye.